Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to our first lesson in our new unit about psychological testing. So today we're going to look at the characteristics of psychological testing. So our objectives and standards to understand the characteristics of psychological testing and to analyze methods of reliability. And take a moment here to read over the standards if you would please. So our desired result is what characteristics are involved in psychological testing. So vocabulary, reliability, the ability of a test to give the same results under similar conditions. Validity, the ability of a test to measure what it is intended to measure. Percentile system is a ranking of test scores that indicate the ratio of scores lower and higher than a given score. And the norm is a standard of comparison for test results developed by giving the test to large, well-defined groups of people. So reasons for psychological testing. Psychological tests all have something in common. They seek to understand a lot about a person in a short period of time. And some of the questions that you can see here from the picture are what psychological testing measures. It's possible for these tests to predict how a person may perform in a certain career or discover their talents or abilities. Tests can also help a person better understand themselves or their behavior. However, we know that psychological tests must meet certain characteristics in order for them to be considered accurate. So psychological testing characteristics, there are three major elements of psychological testing. The first is reliability. Reliability is the ability of a test to give the same results under similar conditions. The second one is validity. This is the ability of a test to measure what is intended to measure. And then the third part here is standardization. Tests must be administered and scored the same way all the time, and a norm must be established or an average score for the test. So reliability. Reliability, again, is the ability of a test to yield the same results under a variety of similar circumstances. Okay, so reliability can be tested in three basic ways. The first part, does the person receive the same score after multiple testing sessions? So imagine this. Imagine a person scores a 68, a 92, and a 75 on a test in different sessions. These results are not really reliable since they are too far apart. 68, 92, and 75, way too far apart to be considered reliable. A more reliable test would have scores that are closer together, such as maybe a 68, a 71, and a 70. That we would consider a more reliable test. Number two, are the testing results the same if scored by different people? If a test is scored by two different people, the results should not be extremely different, such as, let's say, one teacher grades an essay and gives you an A on the essay, and then another teacher grades the same essay and gives you a C. That's not reliable. The results should be very similar, and they should be graded about the same that gives you the same score. And then the third part is if the test is divided in half, are both scores the same? So if we have a 100-question test and we divide it into 50 questions, you should relatively get the same amount of questions right and wrong on both parts of the test. That would make a test reliable. Validity. Now, tests can be reliable, but they're not always valid. The ability of a test to measure what is intended to test is known as validity. So think about this. If I were to give you a history test, you wouldn't expect the test to have questions about the biology or anatomy of an insect. You'd be like, why is that on here? That doesn't have anything to do with history. Same with another test. Say if you had a bio test, you wouldn't expect questions about the American Revolution. That's not valid to the test. That doesn't measure what it's intended to measure. Now, predictive, validity is a way to measure the validity of a test. So imagine this, and this is something that psychologists will do sometimes. They may test employees of a business about their managers, such as their managers' management styles, etc. Power, authority, things like that. Now, the psychologist can check the validity of a test by seeing if the employees improve their production and work under the managers. If the employees improve their work skills, then the test of the managers or the psychologist testing these managers can assume to be valid since the employees are improving their work styles or their work habits or the production of the company. So norms and standardization. In order for standardization to occur, there are two things that must happen, okay? When the test results are obtained, they must be transferred into something useful. Psychologists must design tests to be used in a variety of settings and establish a scale for comparison of established norms. So they have to translate those results into something useful and also come up with established norms. Those are the two things that need to happen for standardization. Now, it's typically created by transforming raw test scores into a percentile system or a ranking of scores from lowest to highest. Okay, the test is given to a large group of people, which results will be used as a comparison. Based on the scores, percentiles are established and called the test norms. So let's stop here for a minute. So let's imagine if a child scores a 30 out of 50 on a vocabulary quiz. What does that mean? Well, that tells us that the child has a good understanding of vocabulary, but how does it compare to others in their age group? So that's understanding the norms and the percentile system. So yes, the child might have a good, vocabulary or have a good understanding of vocabulary, but let's say maybe the child falls in the 80 percentile range for 30 out of 50, okay? That's pretty good, right? We can see, that's more than average. So we can say that, maybe most students are at the 50 percentile range. So that child would be in maybe the 80 percentile range. And you can see that, it's obviously lower down here, with very limited knowledge, and then obviously higher up here with, lower down here again with extremely high knowledge. So most people would fall in the middle of the group there. But for this child's case, we could say maybe they fall in the 80 percentile for the vocabulary test. So based on the scores, percentiles are established and called the test norm. So again, we could say that, it's normal to be in the 50th percentile. It doesn't always have to be the 50th percentile, but, it can also as well. Most high schoolers can understand the meaning of percentiles and norms when discussing the Scholastic Assessment Test or the SAT. If you've taken this or have yet to take it, when you get your results, they'll give you your results and say, oh, you fell in the 30th percentile for reading, you fell in the 50th percentile for math, and you fell in maybe the 60th percentile for writing. Okay, and what that does is it compares you to current students around the country in your age group or in your grade. So other 10th graders or 11th graders around the United States, and compares you to them. Okay, so that's just kind of a more common sense way to think about it, is that the SAT is an example of percentiles and norms. Now remember that norms are not really standards. We don't say, hey, that's what everybody has to be. We don't say, oh, we want everybody to be at 80%. We would like everyone to maybe be at the 80th percentile for vocabulary, but it's not a standard. It's just the average for your group for that current time period. So to understand your results for a test in the future, you can ask yourself these questions. Do you think if you took the same test again, you would receive a similar score? This is known as reliability. Is your performance on this test similar to your usual performance on tests in this subject? That's validity. So if you usually get a 90 on your history test, and then maybe one time you get a 60 on your history test, you might say, well, was that test valid? What were some things on the test that maybe, shouldn't have been there? And I'm not saying to question your teachers all the time, but it's just a way to think about it. And then comparing yourself to your classmates, where do you think your score would be within the group? So that's standardization. So where does my score possibly fall in terms of other students in the class or other students in my grade or in my state or whatever the case may be? All right, so that's all I got for today. So I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you soon.